executive coach, trainer, and speaker. And I do a myriad of things, training in companies, one-on-one coaching, and speaking at various events. I can be found at www.abbyhavermann.com, where you can find all the different offers that I do. And if you go to the blog section, you can download my free ebook, 7 Steps to Stop Self-Sabotage.
And who doesn't like something that's free?
That's right. And who doesn't want to stop self-sabotaging?
I know, I know. Like I think I was doing that a little bit in my 20s where I thought I was the king of my own ish. I just don't like to swear, so but you can swear, right? And I was like as broke as I just broke.
Yeah.
Right? But I would self-sabotage because I was just looking for a thing. I was looking for all the right things in all the wrong areas. And it was very interesting that as I look back now in my 30s, I'm like, okay, I did that wrong, I did that wrong, and I did that wrong. Is that how a little bit of self-sabotage works, where once you realize, I think this isn't working out the way I want to, then you start to identify the reasons and what is causing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the major reason for self-sabotage, and this is what I work with executives and leaders to do, is to unwire the unconscious habits of emotion and thought that no longer serve them. And I think that when we, are sabotaging, it is this program, this automatic program that we're in. We are literally not aware of the thoughts and the emotions we're having, and they react. They're knee-jerk actions that come out of those emotions. I was just talking about this in a group today. So I feel guilty, and my behavior is a result of that guilt, as opposed to, I feel anxious. This person's upset. And so I'm going to be like, what's wrong? Are you okay? Is everything okay? And running around doing all the things. I'm behaving out of that anxiety. That's a very unconscious reactive process. And it's self-sabotaging because you are now sometimes over-functioning, you're people-pleasing, you're, doing all these things that have nothing to do with, a calm state, as opposed to feeling anxious, becoming aware of it and saying, wow, I get really anxious when someone around me is upset. What is that about? That's interesting.
That
Let me
is, that is.
handle that.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of women, maybe men go through this, but as we talked about, men just don't talk when it comes to these things, right? But you hear a lot of people saying that I'm a recovering people pleaser, like they would actually extinguish their own energy
Yeah.
to please someone else. And there's some people that I've seen where they'll go out of their way, right? They're like, "Oh, are you okay, Abby?" He's like, "Are you sure? I can do this. I can do this." Meanwhile, everyone in their own household sometimes, or in their own world, or their own surrounding, gets neglected, gets forgotten, and then most importantly, they forget themselves. I've seen people try to help people so much that their own health deteriorates, and they do it to a
Oh,
point
yeah.
where they can't even function. Have you seen that as well?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge part of my client base. I mean, really, we have, these, positive intelligence calls it these saboteurs that live inside, our mind, and the pleaser is one of them. And so people who have a pleaser saboteur, that pleaser is always telling them everything's going to be okay if you make sure that someone else is okay. And it is extraordinarily sabotaging because, to your point, you are leaking emotional energy. And when we're putting all of our energy toward these emotions of anxiety and guilt and shame and that someone else is unhappy, that energy that we're leaking in emotions is energy we're taking away from our immune system. We're taking away from all of our other systems. And that's how people do get really sick and run down. And the fallacy that women, I think in particular, have is that we think that, oh, I'm doing this because I'm just a really thoughtful person and I'm just too thoughtful and I'm just too nice. And so I do all these things. And I cut that bullshit right down off the knees, because that is not, and I just said this in a group today, that is not why people please. People please because they are so anxious and they're trying to get rid of their own anxiety. And the way to get rid of their own anxiety is to make sure that someone else is happy. And the trade-off is that they will feel resentful. But what they're saying is, I am more comfortable with resentment than I am with the anxiety that someone is upset with me. So I will go ahead and overfunction. I will go ahead and do more than I can and exhaust myself because this anxiety is so uncomfortable, even though on some level they know that they always wind up resentful. So until they get more uncomfortable with resentment and and betraying themselves than they do with anxiety, that's going to stay the same.
So it seems like they're trading one negatively impactful experience and emotion for another, but they've convinced themselves saying that, well, I'm saving half the world, even though
Right.
my life is in ruins, but
Right.
I can get to saving me. There's always someone else that needs saving. And to hear that people have convinced themselves to that point, I look at it from like, let's say the different types of relationships, right? Personal, professional, and romantic. If I'm doing that at my job, something else is suffering. It could be my romantic relationship. It could be maybe my interpersonal relationship. If I'm doing that romantically, I'm thinking, okay, I'm this person is a source of my happiness because I'm always trying to please them. But do my kids get that attention? Does my job
Right.
get that attention? Right? Is there a way for some of these people to maybe self-identify the self-sabotage so they can become more balanced?
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of what the ebook that I wrote does. And it's really, recognizing that we are made up of all different parts. We have all different personality parts, right? So, um, saying I'm the kind of person who blah 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 is just crazy because I'm the kind of person who, doesn't want to eat gluten, but I'm also the kind of person who really wants the chocolate cake. So there are different parts of ourselves that are out at any given time. And so one of the things that's really important to remember is that if, for example, you have a part that's very people pleasing, that means that at the root level, you are a very thoughtful and caring person. And uh, when your nervous system is regulated, for lack of a better way to say that, right? You're in a state of calm and ease and flow, then those beautiful qualities just come naturally out of you. But when you get into a state of stress, that those beautiful qualities of not thoughtfulness become this hyper reactive, oh my God, I've got to make sure everybody's okay because it makes me so anxious. And so there's lots of practices that you can do. And I work with a lot of very experienced meditators, which is wonderful. But even they can fall really succumb to this because we think, well, if I meditate for an hour in the morning, then I'm really on top of my thoughts and I'm watching them. But if you open your eyes and then you spend the rest of the day completely unconscious, doing the same things, having the same habitual reactions, it's really no different. So you need to be able to put practices, 10-second practices in during the day, things that sort of wake you up. Like I said at the beginning, right? It's been or I don't know if we were on camera or not on camera, but I said I was been a whirlwind and I was trying to remember to be conscious, right? Sometimes we just get swept away, but it's really a practice. And there are things that you can do that has been proven to be able to help you move out of that state of stress into a state of ease and flow and become more aware more of the time.
I wonder what is the source of people's anxiety that makes them fall into that type of behavior. Because when I look at my own life, and there's a time where I was doing that, and I felt I thought in my mind, I was doing the right thing. I
Mm,
was doing what I was raised to do, right? Like you help others before you help yourself. And it put me in a situation one time where it was difficult for me to understand why my life was the way it was,
yeah.
right? And I had to do a lot of self reflection. I had to say, okay, Terrain, why do you continue to fall out with certain people, even though you have gone above and beyond to please them? And what I found is that I was doing it with the wrong people. And I was
Mm,
surrounded by the wrong people. So, for example, when I got my house, I was so happy and I wanted to people please, right? So I said to all my friends at that time, because I have this house now, everyone has a place to hang out and be themselves and things like that, right? It was like I was building this community. And then one person turned around and said, why is it that you can get a house and I can't?
Hmm.
Totally deflated, totally devalued the situation. And 1 year later, that friendship ended because there was um, this unsaid tension between the two of us.
Yeah.
But on my end, Abby, I was like, I am doing the right thing. I'm trying to please all of these people, but what was coming back to me wasn't the same energy. So why do you think we fall into the trap of becoming this way, even though the anxiety is there, but we're trying to say, okay, what is the source of this? Why am I this way?
Well, I mean, so two things. I mean, first of all, remember that the people that we attract in our lives are a mirror of our inner world. So if you're attracting a bunch of people that are devaluing you, that means there's a part in your inner world that you are not valuing in you. And so I love the saying, I know who said it to me, I don't know who coined it, but I love the saying, if I'm not the problem, then there is no solution. So people, I think we've gotten really accustomed to saying, oh, the problem is I trusted the wrong people, or they were bad, or they were this, or narcissists, or all those kinds of things. And then they go off and they try and find new people, but they haven't changed themselves at all. And the only way to change anything in your life is for you to change. And if you change inside yourself, that part of you, I believe that it all comes down to worthiness. I just feel like I just don't think I've ever seen something that at the end of the day did not come down to a core worthiness issue. And if you fix that worthiness inside yourself, you are no longer attracted to the same people. When those people say things or do things that upset you, you have a completely different reaction to it. You don't see it as a reflection of your worth. When they say something, you see it as a reflection of how they feel about themselves. And so when you see it differently, you behave differently and you respond differently. And then if the friendship needs to end, it's not so painful because it's just ends. Or sometimes we're able to just impact other people just by being different. And they say, gee, I like what you have. What do you do? I need to change something.
Looking at it as it's something that is indicating that is broken maybe in our lives or something that needs to change.
Absolutely. I mean, like I had a few months ago, I remember, or maybe it was last year, I was just attracting all these clients just in chaos. They were just in utter chaos. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I'm attracting people who are in chaos. They're not really the people I want to work with. And then I looked inside and I was like, oh my God, my inner world is so chaotic right now. I'm doing 25,000 million things. I'm going 75 different directions. I'm burning myself out, and as soon as I created that awareness and I started changing, like, I'm not even kidding. It happens like magic. Like those people started falling off, and the people that, I love to work with and that light me on fire just started coming into my life. It works every single time. Like if something is not going well in your life, who is the person who has the things that you want? And how can you be more of that person? Can you catch the things that you're saying every day? The person who's saying, well, why do you get to have a house and I don't? Well, because you were the person that's saying those things. That's why. Drain didn't say those things. That's how he got the house. He didn't feel that way about himself. He didn't behave that way. He didn't take the actions of someone who feels victimized by someone else's success. And so he got the house and you didn't. It's as simple as that. But that person could get the house too if they wanted to start to get curious about what they're saying and how they're acting and how they feel and what thoughts they're firing every day.
And with that statement right there, she's going to put us in a whole lot of trouble because Abby is 100% right, right? Because it's like, if you want something, what are you doing to go get it? Right? I can look at someone and say that, yes, that person has a nice car, that person has a nice job, that person has a beautiful marriage and a beautiful family, right? But I have a choice. I can work just as hard as that person, or harder to get what they want, or I can be envious of it and try to sabotage it. And hopefully, when it falls apart, I take it from them. And I think a lot of people suffer from that, which is why a lot of people feel like they're the victim. They can look at an Abby, they can look at a train and say, okay, why are they able to do this? Why can't I do it? Right. And then they become that toxic person because if you're not going to be better, you're going to be bitter. And if you are going to be bitter, then you're going to have a whole bunch of problems because then everyone's success looks like an insult to you. Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's funny because it's not even like you don't have to work so hard. It's not like I have to work as hard and this, it doesn't have to be hard. It's about really getting curious about who you're being. And so when you say that, it's really funny because like years ago, do you know Brene Brown? It's phenomenal. I love Brene Brown. But I used to just be so resentful because, she has a master's in social work and I have a master's in social work. And I had taken incredible interest in shame and vulnerability. And it was something I talked about all the time and worked with my clients on and all this stuff. And here she was, she's so successful. And I remember there was a time in my life where literally I couldn't listen to her podcasts or her things because I would just feel angry. Why aren't I Brene Brown? Why didn't I do? And I didn't do those things because I was literally burying